And greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show. It is the final week of 2023. I am Steve Deace. He's Todd Erzin. He's Aaron McIntyre. Merry Christmas to all of you. A reminder, somewhat regular program today for a Tuesday. You'll get some fake news or not, for example, coming up a little bit later on. Tomorrow, we have a very special year-end full 2-hour buy, sell, or hold. And you know I don't ever look at the propositions ahead of time. I did happen to see, Aaron, in my Twitter feed, however, that there were, when I scrolled by and saw your solicitation for offerings, there were well over 400.
Yeah, I meant to tell you I logged into your account and retweeted that from your account. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's okay. Well, you know what that means? You're going to have to actually go through these.
Oh.
You're gonna have to rank them.
Listen to yourself.
We can't just
What is this nonsense?
We can't just randomly grab 400 and assume there's no repeats, everything's good. That's a lot.
You realize okay? I do that every week though, right? I go through them. I just don't rank them.
Okay. I guess you have to go through them to some extent to get them up on the screen.
Yeah.
True. Okay. All right. So we appreciate that. There's got to be some doozies in there with that many for sure. So that'll be on tomorrow's program. Thursday, one of the most watched episodes or listened to, downloaded episodes we do every year. It is the special 2-hour Deace Group Roundtable Year in Review instead of Week in Review. Former BlazeTV contributor Jill Savage, current Blaze media colleague Sarah Gonzalez. They will be this year's guest panelist, and we absolutely cannot wait for that. That's coming up on Thursday. And then on Friday, the final show of the year, our Year in Review. Todd and Aaron have their top 10 stories of the year that we'll go over and more. So a lot of cool stuff coming your way as we finish out the week here and the year 2023 here on Blaze TV radio and podcast on the Steve Deace Show. Also want to make sure we mention here at the top our good friends over at First Cup Coffee Company. If you're a patriot who digs a good cup of coffee, how about a great cup of coffee made by fellow patriots? You'll get that whether it's freshly roasted beans delivered in ground, whole bean texture pods, or bulk 11 roast profiles. All are available. Shipped within days of being roasted. In fact, they even put the roast date right there on each bag. Just go to firstcup.com. Use the promo code DACE to save an additional 10% on your order. Firstcup.com, promo code DACE. And if you subscribe so that you get their coffee every single month, you'll get an additional 10% off for the life of your subscription. All right, we mentioned some fake news or not. My daughter Anastasia will join us with something her and Aaron have cooked up later in the program. We are efforting at the bottom of this hour. It looks like travel schedules are going to align. We shall see. But my good buddy Congressman Chip Roy is here in Iowa for some caucus campaigning. He is landing here in about 20 minutes, correct?
I believe that's the case.
And so our hope is that landing is on time and he'll get off the plane, pick up the phone, and give us a call, and we will talk to him coming up here in the next segment at the bottom of the hour. But before we get to all of that, let us begin as we always do with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
It is the final montage of the year 2023, and it's time for the top 5 funniest moments from the year that was. But first, a few items to begin with. The state of Tennessee is taking on the largest asset manager in the world, BlackRock, saying the company breached consumer protection laws by making misleading statements about its woke ESG strategies. BlackRock denies any wrongdoing. Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti earlier this year demanded 10 major asset managers provide information over their woke efforts in investing, part of an investigation into potential breaches of consumer laws. This lawsuit now is a continuation of that investigation. That's a story to keep an eye on. A week after the filing deadline for the GOP primary in Texas's 21st congressional district, Donald Trump threatened Texas Congressman Chip Roy with a primary challenger for Roy's crime of not supporting Trump in the GOP presidential primary. Roy is, of course, objectively one of the 3 most conservative members of Congress. Speaking of Trump, he's said in just the past few days he wants to rebuild American cities.
In addition to our capital, we're going to rebuild our cities into beacons of hope, safety, and beauty better than they have ever been before. We're going to rebuild our cities.
He also said in the last few days he watched as American cities burned down while he was president.
I watched and I stood by and I watched Minneapolis, I watched Portland, I watched so many different places just burn, violently burned.
During another part of his interview on MSNBC yesterday, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was asked if Donald Trump is a threat to democracy.
Now, look, I think Donald Trump, when he was president, I think that he really didn't take some of the action that he could have constitutionally taken. And so I understand there's a narrative saying he's going to be much different this next term. But I look back, what didn't he do? He didn't move forcefully to build the border wall. That languished for years. He didn't fire people like Anthony Fauci from the COVID task force when many conservatives, including me in Florida, were saying they needed to go a different direction. He even gave Fauci an award his last day in office. A lot of the people he appointed, he since trashed after leaving office, but he could have fired them. He didn't really take any action to reform the bureaucracy or to curb the administrative state. So I think what is being said would be him acting in ways that actually were not how he acted before. He deferred a lot of his presidency to some of these people that he now criticizes.
And finally, the top 5 funniest moments from the Steve Deace Show in the year 2023. Number 5, threesome.
Before we get into, Aaron, before we throw the poll up there, a little bit of background on the pollster that we're going to be describing. You guys have worked with me now since 2015 is when we came together as a threesome, right? Let me hold on. Let me rephrase that. Lindsey Graham could be listening. This trio debuted in 2015, correct? Correct. Okay, I'm sorry. That was not intentional. All right.
Did you say threesome before?
No, I didn't.
Honestly, if you said that, I blocked it out.
Yes, and so don't ask again. It never happened. Never. Welcome back on the Steve Deace Show. Hey, before we get to buy, sell, or hold.
Number 4, don't let Aaron do overtime by himself. It's not what the victors and valiant do, guys. That's just not what they do. We do not steal signs. We're just better than you. And the NCAA hates us. If I were Jim Harbaugh, no last names anymore on the jerseys. No last names. It's all, he hate me, written across the back of the jerseys. Number 3, Steve has a senior moment during one of Anna's 2 Truths, 1 Lie segments. Steve did not understand the assignment.
Once lost in the finals of a free throw contest at a Michigan basketball camp to NBA player Dan Majorly's little brother.
Marley.
Had a play designed for him to hit the game-winning three-pointer in a high school basketball game, and the shot went in, but I stepped out of bounds, so it didn't count, and we lost. And never hit a home run in Little League.
The last one is true. The first one is true. The middle one is a lie, because Steve wants us to he wants to correct us by saying, no, it's true. I actually did hit the game-winning shot. That's the lie. That's totally a Steve move. I'm saying that one is the lie just because of that.
That's great. That's great.
So you never hit a home run.
All right. Should I tell him?
Yeah.
I have hit 1 home run
I do.
in my history in Little League, and it was in the finals of the Pinery Park Little League game for Moose Lodge, and a game that we actually won. It wasn't the game-winning home run. It was like early in the game, and that was the only time I ever hit a ball over the fence in a Little League game. I actually did have a play drawn up for me against Lowell High School to hit a 3-point shot. And the ball went in, but I was confused where they had all these volleyball court lines and everything on the court, and so I had stepped out of bounds, came off the pick, hit the shot, but I stepped out of bounds with the ball, so it did not count. So that is also true. So what was the first one again? Because that's the lie.
The first one was once lost in the finals of a free throw contest.
Actually, no, that's true too. So I think all three were true. I think I did it wrong. All 3 of them were true.
You think?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm dunking on all of you, and every single thing that I mentioned I did correctly and greatly and amazingly and perfectly, and I
You
did
just
hit a home
lectured
run.
America on upping its game, and you're totally lost.
And I went to zoo school.
You did not understand.
Yes, and I went to zoo school. Hey, yeah.
Number 2, is it smoked? Once again, during one of Anna's segments, she asked the team if they'd eat certain foods if they were pumpkin spiced.
Okay, so since it is the beginning of fall, I want you guys to rate these pumpkin spice items.
Here we go.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
Finally, now we're having a serious conversation.
But it was on the list of like the craziest pumpkin spice items. So
Okay,
it's
all right.
10 being, oh, that sounds amazing, and 1 being, ew, gross.
Okay. All right.
So number 1 is pumpkin spice salmon.
I could go for that. I'd give it at least a 5.
Is it smoked as well?
It's whatever you want it to be.
Sure. I'm not like it.
It's whatever you want it to be, so you guys will participate.
Is it served on a fine handmade coffee table?
And number 1, during a February edition of Feedback Friday, Steve fielded an email from a woman named Deborah who said her husband listens to the show. Deborah lambasted the show, making all sorts of false and misleading claims about how Steve does things. In addition, Deborah claimed that Steve's then unreleased movie Nefarious would cause people to become demonically possessed. Again, Deborah doesn't even listen to the show. Her husband does, leading Todd to have this all-time reaction.
Also, can you imagine? Like, she knows her husband likes this.
I know.
He's gonna tune in.
Why won't you
He's
stop
gonna
your
start
husband?
listening to this letter and say, honey, what did you do? Can I not have nice things?
So I will say, Deborah, you appear to be much more optimistic about this film's prospects of influencing people to the darkness than the darkness is, because they have tried union strikes and right to work states, literally tried killing my directors, okay, with COVID pneumonia. I mean, I don't know. My marriage nearly ended. I mean, I'm not, I'm looking both ways before I cross the street right now, Deb. Okay, so can I call you that?
So will Deborah after Mr. Deborah hears this. It's like the whole segment, Deborah. The whole segment. What did you do, Deborah?
And that's what happened while we were away.
Oh, I will never forget that. That one I'll never forget.
That was fantastic. Thank you,
What did
Aaron.
you do, Deborah? What did you do?
And we never heard back, did we?
We never heard back. No, we never did. That was fun. Thank you for doing that. Really appreciated it. Aaron's Montage brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. For more than years now, Patriot Mobile has been around helping to build the parallel economy on the cutting edge of it. In fact, now everybody is saying, well, we need one of those. Well, Patriot Mobile, thankfully, already established a micro parallel economy with one product that in the macro we all need to use in order to be sufficient in modern America. That's our mobile phones. You can make the switch today. No longer have to give your money directly to people who hate you. And also, just as a side hustle here, you get an outstanding product with a phenomenal customer service team. They've been great to our family, and every time we've heard from you in the audience about them, it's been rave reviews. Or, when you have millions of customers, there's going to be issues sometimes. They have fixed those things immediately. Make the switch to Patriot Mobile today. They have dependable nationwide coverage, 100% US-based customer service team that makes switching easy. And right now, for a limited time offer with the promo code Friday76, you can get a free smartphone for a limited time only. Friday76 is the promo code. If you make the switch and use that code, you can get a free smartphone at patriotmobile.com/Steve. patriotmobile.com/Steve, or call them at 972-PATRIOT. That's 972-PATRIOT. All right, we will we'll discuss. Chip's going to join us, we hope, here at the bottom of the hour, and so we'll discuss the calls for primarying Chip Roy. Although I have to tell you, there are a few things more Trumpian than blustering calls to primary among our most honest members of Congress, and then have no attention to detail at all because the filing deadline was more than a week ago. So it couldn't happen anyway. I mean, I think that's just, that is peak Trumpian in this era. Okay. If you don't kneel before Zod, your record doesn't matter. Who you are doesn't matter. You have to go and call me. Let's get rid of this guy. But then no attention to detail. The filing deadline was well over a week ago. So you couldn't, even if you wanted to. and you probably couldn't anyway. So here's the thing. I will say this, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form encouraging this. I have been pretty adamant. You know, I've got a few people pointing out, well, Chip thought Ken Paxton should resign. Okay. I mean, Chip was the deputy attorney general of Texas. He might know more than you know. I don't know, But I didn't say that Chip was perfect. Is that what I said a minute ago?
No.
I said he was among the most honest. Chip will tell you what he really thinks, just maybe don't ask him sometimes. You might not like the answer. I'm kind of similar. I don't like all the answers Chip gives me all the time, and I can tell you he doesn't like all the answers I give him. All right? I didn't say he was the most perfect. I didn't even say he was the most conservative. I said he was among the most honest, and that is true. I think that's really incontrovertibly true. I have tried, and I try to be as honest with you as I can. You guys know that. And unless there is as I've said many times, unless there's a third-party confidence involved, then I've got to put that first. Barring that, I'll be very transparent with you. We started off this year, and guys, you correct me if I'm wrong, if there's any inconsistency in what I'm about to say. We said there were 3 disruptor candidates in the race. In fact, let me narrow it down even more. I said, just me. These guys are grown men. They can have their own opinions and their own thoughts. Okay. I said I thought there were 3 disruptor candidates in the race. I said that I thought there were only 3 people I thought could potentially run for president whose whose profiles I thought were morally worth my time to vote for. And that those 3 individuals were Donald Trump, RFK Jr., and Ron DeSantis. And we said that not even knowing for a long time. It was pretty clear that RFK Jr. was going to run when we started saying this, but we were unclear that he was going to run as an independent. He was still planning to run as a Democrat, originally did. And we didn't even have assurances yet, although it looked likely that Ron DeSantis was going to run. He didn't even declare until almost Memorial Day. Have I said anything? Has this been not the consistent train of thought from me on this show from the time we came back?
It has been.
At the first of the year.
Right.
Okay. Have I also been clear? We have to win. And to me, we, by the way, is not the Republican Party. I don't care about the Republican Party. I don't. I care about America. Which all too often, which almost daily, unless John Fetterman speaks these days. Okay. I mean, that's... Which John Fetterman was a psyop? The mentally incompetent walking VAERS VAERS citation report that we saw last year, or the man of the people just out here spouting Bill Maher-ian levels of common sense that we see now? Or were they both? Do you think? Are they both psyops?
I'm open to all of it.
Yeah, I think we should be open to just virtually almost everything we see nowadays. Right and left could be a psyop. Hell, we could be and just not even realize it. I got told yesterday by the head of the National Weather Service in Jacksonville, Florida yesterday, that I am funded by the Koch brothers and part of the deep state. That happened.
Damn it, Steve, you're holding out on Todd and I
know.
guess.
I know. You guys are like, expected a little bit more a Christmas bonus yesterday, if that's the case. Right. Okay, so we'd be a great psyop because we're not even aware of it. All right. But the we, to me, is a disruptor needs to win. We're running out of time here. Stop me if I'm not saying anything here at the end of the year that I've been saying all throughout this year.
We're on track.
Okay. And therefore, we chose to do long form profiles this year of only 3 presidential candidates. And they were those exact 3 candidates, right?
Yes.
And they each got their own shows.
Yes.
And we took questions from a member of the audience, and we spent entire shows going over those questions. I did another exercise where I went through each of them as a pro-life candidate. If you expand the definition of pro-life to unjust wars, what's gone on with COVID and Big Pharma and the jab, right? Okay. I want to say that I had DeSantis a couple of points ahead of the field, Trump about a point ahead of RFK Jr. I want to say that's how that came out. These are all things we did, right? Okay. At any point in time this year, have I encouraged people to sit out the general election if their guy doesn't win and not take part in the process?
No.
At any point in time, have I done that?
No.
Nope. I'm going to tell you right now, there are more notes in my inbox right now from people telling me they are never voting for Trump again as a nominee than I ever received at this time in 2015, because it was this late in the process, if I recall, when the whole National Review headline, Never Trump, the whole thing kind of started and began, and some huge names, by the way, much bigger than me, huge names were signed up on this, okay? And I am hearing, but you go back and look at it now, that was largely a phenomenon within the conservative think movement that we're a part of, okay? I didn't get a lot of that in my audience. A lot of my audience either thought that he was exactly what they were looking for, or a complete and total, just con man, but they found him humorous. The opinions were pretty split in my audience. There are far more. Let me just tell you. In fact, let me share one of these with you now. I get multiple of these a day. By the way, the guy who sent me the Happy St. Nicholas Day with Joel Osteen having a black eye meme, I find that incredibly offensive. You should have never done it. It has no place whatsoever in any of our discourse. Terrible. Don't send me things like that. Okay, don't. All right? Did I make that clear?
Yeah.
Everybody get that?
Crystal.
All right, good. Found your show via podcast a few months ago. As a result, I joined BlazeTV. A little background on myself. I'm Hispanic, Puerto Rican, became a Republican during the Clarence Thomas hearings via C-SPAN. My family, by and large, is center-left. I'm also a partner of a company home-based in California with 48 employees, but I live in Arizona. Between my wife and I, we have 8 kids, 6 grandkids. My ex-wife and I adopted our 5 children. My oldest sadly passed away in July. My middle one is truly the story of the prodigal son. That story repeats itself every day in people's lives. Life is cruel and yet beautiful at the same time. I can go on and on, but that's my background. But after listening to Tucker yesterday on Tim Pool's show and Trump's attacks on Chip Roy and a slew of other type of similar messages, I'm beginning to feel like if Trump is the nominee, I will not be voting for him. I've never left the presidential voting box unchecked. For the first time in my voting life, I may do it. I've heard your monologues on disruptors, and I've tried to plug in rationally Trump into that, but I just don't agree. There's just nothing serious about this current candidacy as we speak, and I believe it has nothing to do with being disrupted in D.C. It's becoming quite clear that legacy media, by and large, and conservative media are intertwined, and even if they scream at you and deny it. I left Fox earlier this year. Now I only listen to Charles Payne. That's because he's a business guy and wants good economic, analysis probably. He goes on and on. I could read more of this. This is from Alberto. Also wants to wish us a blessed Christmas, so thank you, Alberto. I get a couple of notes like this every day and have for months. Never saw notes like this back in 20. You guys were here. Were we reading notes like this from the audience in 2016? No. No, the people that were having struggles with the Trump candidacy were people that are in the thinker, thought leader camp that we do. People like me were struggling with it. But the audience either just saw it as a fun show or as a movement. Nobody was really like, what is, even if I wasn't going to vote, a lot of the notes were, even if I don't vote for the guy, I love what he's doing because most of these people deserve what he's doing to them. That was kind of your take on it, if I recall, right? Okay. Yeah. This is different. I mean, the amount of people I am hearing from, and I'm not, you won't see me encouraging this on any social media post or anything of that nature. I'm not doing any of that. I've been doing the exact opposite. In fact, I mean, In fact, I get far more notes from people when I say we have to win, telling me, no way, I'm out. This is the first time in my career I can recall, I have no idea how large it is, and maybe I just have a unique audience because we have a somewhat, contrarian show at times. That could be true too. Okay,
sure, it's part of it.
That's part of it. So these kinds of people are maybe finding me as a result of this.
Yeah.
Okay, but I am getting more pushback than I imagined I would about, in the end, we still have to win this thing next year. I don't know what that means, and who knows where that will be when you're inundated when all the coverage next year turns to, well, who knows, maybe it won't, maybe it'll all be trials. We don't know that. But when you're reminded yet again, there's a dementia patient that may be demonically possessed sitting in the White House. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But I've not been at a juncture in my career before where I was getting more pushback from my audience for saying I was going to participate in the larger process than abstaining from it. Because I've done that many times in my career too.
That's good.
Are you guys seeing this, or is it as well? Or is it just I'm seeing it?
Oh, I think I'm seeing it. You always see things at a level on steroids that we do, but I think that's a healthy thing that you're getting that level of counter argument. There's plenty of time to mull that over, but we talk regularly on the show. There's the thinking that we have to win this thing. That is thinking that applies to that. There's time on the clock, but we have all argued at times. What if there really is no time on the clock anymore? That's what we need to discern.
Possible.
And then there's nothing to win anymore.
That's
in the way we think of things in the political terra firma. So we the three of us, absolutely, that's as an important a decision for us to calculate.
And I get that. And that's what I hear from people. If Chip Roy's not good enough, then what are we even doing here?
Exactly.
If Thomas Massey, we did try to primary Thomas Massey, he got annihilated. If that's not good enough, then what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you get notes like this one from Daniel Lewis, who writes, Steve will speak at CPAC before Lindsey Graham accuses Matt Schlapp of sexual assault. So I also get notes like that.
Have you noticed, hey guys, not to derail this conversation, I will chime in. Have you noticed there's been very little Republican, elected official pearl clutching over the Senate staffer thing? Very little.
That is an excellent point, dude. Holy cow.
Do you know why?
Because somewhere in the bowels of North Carolina,
they all have
Madison Cawthorn is saying, yes. I told you so.
Yeah, Cawthorn was right. Even though he was a part of it, seemingly.
Aaron, Satan has a place in the Capitol, too. Yeah. How else are we supposed to worship baby Jesus?
Holy cow, dude. You are so correct about that. I hadn't even thought about it until you just said that.
Well, yeah, they all have, if it's not gay, it's straight stuff going on with their staffers.
Where are the parades of Republican politicians saying, you just literally defiled this place. What are we doing here with these people?
Yeah, it's just crickets.
And God knows the Pope gave them plenty of cover yesterday.
Oh, gosh.
On the email that you just read, I just go back to, other than brothers be flipping in the barbershops, which if it's happening in places that Republicans are not going to be able to win anyway. I just go back to the point that I brought up about a month ago with Bob when he was on. Name me, and there are a few, okay, there's got to be a few, but name me the profile of the Iowa caucus goer who enthusiastically caucused for Ted Cruz in 2016 and it has completely flipped now to Trump. There's a few.
There's a few.
There's a few.
I would say they're probably people likely older.
Yes.
That are and are rightly, in my view, rightly convinced that the Trump presidency was basically stolen from him after a 3-year attempt to have a coup, and then a scamdemic, and then whatever that election we just had was.
Now extrapolate that out to a national scale. Where has Trump increased his ceiling? Where? I ask you. I don't know.
Well, he's winning the black and youth vote. Look at the polls. I'm reliably assured. No? You guys seem skeptical?
Bit.
You guys are a tough crowd. we just got word from Chip. His plane has not landed yet, so we're going to push him to the top of next hour. But I think that's fortuitous timing because I think there's a point I've been waiting to make, and I think the conversation we were just having a second ago about how I am seeing more people that are telling me if Trump is the nominee, they'll never vote for him than I ever saw during the initial ascendancy of the brand that became known as Never Trump, which was about this time in 2015. And how do I do this? How do I want to explain this? For years, I've pointed out that when elections are about personalities, who wins?
Not us.
Yes. When elections are about issues, who wins?
Sometimes us.
Sometimes us. Okay. But when they're about personalities, who never wins?
Us.
Us. Never. Okay. And the reason why is because if you asked somebody, and I would quantify this, I would explain to you why this was. If you ask somebody, why are you a Democrat? They're going to probably give you an identity. That's probably still true now. Okay. They're not going to say, well, I want to make sure we complete Antonio Gramsci's Long March to the Institutions and remake the West in the image of Marxist utopia. That's not what the average Democrat is going to say. I mean, even though that is what they're doing. Okay. But they're going to say, I'm black, I'm gay, I'm a single mom, I'm a teacher. Okay. They're going to give you an identity.
And more importantly, you're a fascist.
Yes. Okay. If you ask, and I used to say, if you ask the average person, why are you a Republican? They would give you a principle. I believe in low taxes. I believe in limited government. I believe in the Constitution. I'm pro-life. I believe in a strong national defense. They might even give you a collage of the things that I just mentioned. All right. That's changing. And we're watching this change before our very eyes. And I think there are people, especially if you're like me, and you got into this on the basis of issues and really believed in the Rush Limbaugh programs you grew up listening to, and all the conservative books that you grew up reading. Okay, I've talked to you before that when my wife and I started dating, when she wanted to get to know me better, she knew there were two things she needed to know. One thing she needed to know more about. She already knew about Michigan football. Comes from a family of Michigan alums, fans. She grew up on it. So she knew all about Bo Schembechler and all that stuff. The other thing, she didn't know anything about politics. Came from a military family. My late father-in-law, God rest his soul, even all the years I knew him, I might have heard him give like one political opinion ever. He took the charge of, you served the commander-in-chief. He took that into his retirement years when I knew him. I mean, he believed in respecting the office and following the chain of command. And so there wasn't a lot of partisan political talk around her home growing up. So she went out and read Rush Limbaugh's first two books, The Way Things Ought to Be and See, I Told You So. She went out and read Newt Gingrich's book about the contract with America and everything else. Because I would, like a lot of you, before I was on this side of the microphone, I was a true believer in these things. And I know a lot of you are, if you're tuned into a show like this. And what you're struggling with is, and let me. I think that I can explain to you why this current iteration, where should I go here? Should I?
Probably, if we don't know if there's time on the clock or not.
I'm going to go here. Okay. When you watch, for example, what Tucker Carlson is doing. If you watch Tucker's daily show that he's putting on Twitter, it's a lot like the show that he did on Fox. There's a lot of good content there, a lot of good interviews there, a lot of the right muckraking that we all loved on Fox. Okay? But he clearly has made a calculation, and it's very obvious. And the calculation he has made is in response to what I'm about to explain to you. The issue-based party is dead. Whether he wins the nomination or not, whether he wins the presidency or not, Donald Trump, and this is a purposeful act. You have to keep in mind, this is a New York guy, comes out of this kind of a culture. And if you're in New York, there aren't a lot of Republicans. So most of your time is spent around Democrats. The Republican Party is now a personality-based party. It is not an issue-based party. And so, like, how for years were the Democrats able to get fire-breathing, fire and brimstone preaching black pastors to hold hands with Rosie O'Donnell at the Democrat National Convention and pray to God while she's booing him? How did this happen? They all agreed that they have to be in a coalition behind a personality in order to get what they want. Now, they want different things. What the black minister wants from government is a lot different than what the rainbow jihad wants. Fair? Mm-hmm. Okay? But do they both want something from government?
Yes.
Yes. And so the personality at the forefront of the Democratic Party is the pathway to acquire that access, to achieve their objective. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You've watched the Republican Party become this. I mean, go look at a lot of the top Trump shows. Go watch Steve Bannon's show for a given week. If you don't do this, go watch War Room. And if you don't connect Trump to anything they say, you would agree with all of it. I mean, look at the work that he did, the work that him and, why am I having a brain fart?
Naomi,
thank you. The work that him and Naomi did on that jab is the best work that's been done in America as far as I have seen. I've given them credit multiple times, have I not? But you ever notice that it never gets connected back to the guy that... Look at Naomi's tweets. Ever see Naomi even tweet anything connecting the jab to Donald Trump? Nope.
Which is amazing considering where she comes from. I mean, the Al Gore wing.
You know why? I'll tell you why. I don't have to ask Naomi to tell you why this is the case. She's not getting on War Room again if she does. This is the price. It's a personality-based party now. It's a personality-based party, like the Democrats. This is the problem that they have with a Chip Roy or a Thomas Massey. Remember when I said yesterday, I've lost how much money calling out the narrative of the election? What more do you guys want from me? Notice I left that blank. Let me fill it in for you. I could actually say the 2020 election was totally legit as long as I kissed Donald Trump's ring and said, America's dead if he's not the president next year, and unendorsed Ron DeSantis. He wouldn't give a rip what I think of the 2020 election because he doesn't care that I think it was rigged, and I won't do that. All this entire thing now, all of it is a loyalty paradigm. It's based on a personality. And if you think, by the way, that this is going to end, I mean, Trump's not a long-term investment. Whether he wins or not, he's 70. He'd be 78, I believe, when he took the White House, even if he were to win. You don't make long-term investments in brands when they're 78, human brands when they're 78 years old. This is a temporary, he is a temporary staging area, but this paradigm will not be. And so I see when some of you go after Tim Pool, I see it in my Twitter feed all the time. I'm not even saying I disagree with your takes on him. Why don't I join you? Because issues are more important to me than personalities. And as much as I think Ron DeSantis would make the superior president, one of the most productive conversations I've ever had in my entire career happened back in February. You guys remember which show it took place on? Tim Pool's. And ultimately, what's more important to me? Principles or personalities? What am I in this business for? Principles. So I don't have an issue with Tim Pool based on what he thinks of Ron DeSantis, because Ron DeSantis is a personality to me, not a principle. I am I'm not with Ron DeSantis for president because I just like him better as a person, or I have some angle here, but my principles say he's the best candidate. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't judge Tim Pool or anybody else that I've met or liked in this business off their opinion of Ron DeSantis. Just don't lie to me or gaslight me. You can have any opinion you want. I don't care. But I understand the difficulty of getting to this place. If you are, I listen to all the shows. I went to all the CPACs. I really believed this stuff. And now I'm finding out that it doesn't matter what anybody believes. They just want a seat at the table. Here's what I need to tell you. It's actually always been this way. You want to know why Mitt Romney got a bunch of Christian conservative leaders to endorse him? Even though his record on their issues as governor of Massachusetts was legitimately wicked. Like, not weak, wasn't Pensian, wicked. He is the inventor of gay marriage. He shut down Catholic adoption agencies because they wouldn't hand children over to homosexual surrogate parents. He funded abortions with Romney Care. All facts. He made them feel important. He sent a bunch of them like leather chairs with their like initials or something monogrammed on them, if I recall. He gave them a seat at the table, made them think that they were going to have power. Nothing's changed. Here's the thing. Some of you are learning this later than me. This has actually kind of always been this way. Trump is just an exaggeration of it. And what makes Trump particularly better at this is, unlike Mitt Romney and John McCain and all those people, he's actually delivered on some of our issues for us. There's like legit reasons to go ahead and say, hey, I'm fine cutting the deal with Trump, because who appointed the justice to overturn Roe? Trump. He did that. Yeah. Who moved the embassy to Jerusalem? He did that. Whose administration signed the peace deals with Israel? He did that. Okay. So I think some of you are going to have to learn that this is actually how the Republican Party has always operated. The lie was the movement. But internally, it's always been based on personality and grifts. Always. Sometimes the grifts were called Tea Parties. Sometimes the grifts were called religious right. They always start out as some form of conservative populist movement. Go read what the New York Times wrote in 1992 about Rush Limbaugh's first book, The Way Things Ought to Be. Go read their review. And they talk about Rush, the father of conservative populism. That book was published over 30 years ago. There's nothing new under the sun. The Matrix just reboots, guys. And we never end up with Neo. We always end up as Cypher. We always just take the deal, because the beautiful lie is better than actually unplugging the machine and kicking the bastards out. Nothing's changed. It's just this version of the Matrix under Trump is superior to the other ones, clearly. Was the country better from 2017 to 2019 than it has been?
Yeah.
Going into year 3 of Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Unquestionably so. Would we be better off if Donald Trump had been president for the last going on 3 years than Joe Biden?
Yeah.
I think that's unquestionably true. Yes. But in the end, there's never a Neo. There cannot be a Neo. There can only be ciphers. And I think you watch what's going on with Tucker. He has clearly done that math and has determined, well, this is the paradigm. And especially now that I'm out on my own, this is what it will take to continue to build an empire. And this is the toll you pay. Check the box of the right slurpy kneel before Zod words to Trump, and then you can go out and say whatever you want. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I can't, I get that. I totally get it. I mean, if I had endorsed Trump, I could have probably gotten him to fund stuff that would have investigated the jab while he was out there taking credit for it. Because the only principle in a Trump world is Trump. And that's new to a lot of you that really believed that this was a movement. And it took me a while to learn this. And it was a bitter lesson, but I'm over it now. It is what it is. We live east of Eden.
And to be fair, it's hard even after you've learned it, because I remember how good it felt to be free when I didn't vote for either John McCain or Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. I pulled back on that. No. Then 4 years later, I could not stand Mitt Romney. But I still voted for him because of what Obama did on multiple issues with Obamacare, with Benghazi. And I felt trapped. So even after you have that knowledge, Steve, for example, you just, 4 years, how many years ago, voting straight ticket Republican for the first time? Mm-hmm. It's the same example.
In response to Kavanaugh.
You know it full well, but you're just like, I have no good choices.
And it's because what the Democrats tried to do to an awful nominee was so beyond the pale of the rules of engagement, I thought it had to be punished. Yeah. And then I did that, and we lost 40 House seats, so it was an irrelevant vote. Didn't count for anything at all. But I think the reason why I'm seeing more of these emails now than what I saw, because go back and look at yes, it was still about Trump's persona, but instead of chanting Trump, people were chanting build the wall. People were chanting lock her up. What are people chanting now? Just Trump. And so what I think a lot of you are learning, if you're the people sending me these notes, and I'm getting way more of these than I got in 2015 at this time, I think it's because you are now waking up to the fact what you believed in does not exist. And the Trump era has just made that's always been the case. The Trump era has just made it official. We've always been yellow dog Republicans. It's never mattered what Republicans believed. I mean, the Democratic Party got annihilated on Obamacare, and then the Republicans turned right around and nominated for president the person who gave Obama's worst idea before he had it. And you were told if you didn't want to vote for it, you hated America. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. It's just the intensity level's been dialed up, but nothing's changed. The frosting is zanier on the cake. The cake is all still the same. CPAC's been a fraud since 1989. Nothing's different, guys. Nothing. It's just the intensity level, and we're more exposed to it via social media, and it's more obvious now. That's all. And those of you that are like, I'm out, you're going to have to just, figure out whether you can work in this kind of environment. Because the amount of money that's being made doing it this way, the idea that people are going to just give that gravy train up when Donald Trump exits stage left, or his time on Earth has passed and Father Time remains undefeated. That's not how this is going to work, folks. People are not going to be like, well, I guess Trump's gone, so my gravy train ends. Oh, no. They're going to be looking for other proxies to keep their gravy train going. Hour 2 is next. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Aaron McIntyre, Todd Erzin, and all of you. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Email the show, steve@stevedeace.com to access that. DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also find me on the podcast, and a lot of you have. And if you have not done this yet, first of all, thank you to all of you who have. And if you've yet to do this, please leave us a 5-star review. Hit subscribe, or in the case of iTunes, follow. That way, every time we do a new episode, it shows up in your podcast feed every single time. And we say thank you and appreciate all of you that have done that for us. Let's keep those things going. They do help to boost the show somewhere in the algorithmic ether, I am told. This portion of the show is brought to you by our partners over at Preborn. And again, if you are looking for year-end giving options, I mean, this is a year-round giving option as far as we're concerned at our house. But if you are looking for year-end giving, there's few causes better than the cause of life, particularly the way that Preborn fights for it. Very effective. They understand truth and grace. They don't just say it. Like a lot of your pleated khaki, sweater-vested suburban megachurch pastor who just uses that as a catchphrase and doesn't really mean it or practice it, or just practices the one part of it and not the other. They do them both at Preborn. First, they confront moms considering committing the sin of murder. They confront them with the truth that that baby is another body. It is not their body. That heartbeat is somebody else's. And over 80% of the time, that God-given conscience is convicted, and they realize, wow, I am a mom. I can't do this. And that's great. And they make the decision that my mom made when she considered abortion. They don't go through with that. But They understand now that they have brought the truth that this mom needs help. She needs grace. I mean, if you have a husband that you are in a fulfilling and secure relationship with, you're probably not going to get an abortion. It's the women who don't have that are looking at it. And so they need help. They need guidance. They need support. They offer all of that too, both in terms of moral and emotional with counseling, things that are tangible like postnatal care, prenatal care, car seats. They do all that for free. The ultrasounds for free, provided they've got tax-deductible funding and donations from people like us. And if you would like to make that donation today, go to preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve. I can't give a charity, I can't give a ministry a better endorsement other than our own family has cut them checks out of our own account. Preborn.com/Steve is where you want to go. Preborn.com/Steve. Real quick, before we get to fake news or not, I just saw this from our old friend Phil Kerpen. It's been a minute since we've had a Phil Kerpen data dump like we had so many times during COVID,
Those
right?
were the days, hunkered down.
Yes. According to the U.S. Census, net domestic migration by state, April 1st, 2020 through July 1st, 2023. Number one, Florida, 819,000 people. A net migration of plus 819,000. Number two is Texas, a net migration of plus 657,000. North Carolina, a net migration of plus 310,000. South Carolina, number four, a net migration of plus 248,000. And Arizona's number five, plus 218,000. At the bottom, number one, net migration loss, California. Net 1.2 million. Net migration loss. New York, minus 883,000 net migration loss. Illinois, minus 364,000. I'm doing round numbers here. New Jersey, net migration minus 153,000. Massachusetts, net migration minus 150,000. What stands out to you guys there about those numbers?
Well, this, you always talk about, polls and getting, into the underlying data. I hope that this is the Steve Deace version of, get out, go where the food is kind of thing for actual conservatives, finally cutting the cord and moving on somewhere where their vote counts. But if it's something closer to basically being the same thing as a wide open southern border, and we don't know what these people think or believe, and they plan on living on the dole no matter where we go, I don't know. I don't know that we, just based on what you read, can read anything one way or the other. I mean, we knew California sucked, okay, but are they sending everybody else sucky people now?
That's a good question, too. Yeah. Aaron, what do you think?
The answer to that question is always yes. If it ends with does this suck? Probably pretty surefire bet that the answer is yes. That's my reaction.
Well, that's a great segue to where we're going next for fake news or not. All right. So a couple days ago, I was on our friend Jesse Kelly's show talking about the importance. He was doing an entire show on the importance of the 2024 election. I had me, Ned Ryan, a few other people on individual segments. For fake news or not, thought we would show you the portion of the program that I was on. And then we'll come back and have Todd and Aaron discuss what, if anything, that you just heard me talk to Jesse Kelly about was fake news or not.
2024, we have some harsh truths we tell you about 2024 often. And I don't say that in cheer when I say it, but 2024 for people on the right is going to be a hard year no matter what. But for people who, I hear, you probably hear them all the time, maybe you're one of them who brag about poll numbers and stuff like that. 2024 is going to be brutal for you, because you're going to find out what kind of country you live in. You don't know yet. You should know, but you're going to find out. Joining me now is someone else who tells his audience very hard truths, the great Steve Deace of the Steve Deace Show. Steve, I vacillate. That's a huge word for me, Steve. You know that. I vacillate back and forth between complete and utter disdain for the people on our side who are really naive about how evil everything is, to feeling genuine sorrow for them. I talked with a couple friends a few nights ago, good people, Republican people, you know, they were stunned that I thought Trump was going to go to prison. They were stunned. They actually said to me, you're going to love this, Steve. They said to me, but these are all lies. He didn't do it, as if that somehow matters. The level of naivete, Steve, I can't deal with this anymore.
Jesse, help me understand. Elections are rigged. A shadow group called the Deep State runs America. And yet, the same people who say this also say that, well, the obviousness of the scam of these legal persecutions of Trump will come to light and the system will shine through and justice will be done. Jesse, help me understand how you believe all those things simultaneously. How do you do it? I don't get it. Help me. How do you do that? Help me.
I don't know. So, okay. Obviously, I think we're just dealing with, and you can argue with me on this, obviously, as you always can. I think we're just dealing with basic human nature, Steve. Like that story of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising from World War II, when the Jews rose up and killed a bunch of Nazis. However, people miss the fact that 80% of that ghetto had already been unloaded to the death camps before an uprising took place. It is human nature to simply deny how bad things are until you can't deny it anymore.
Donald Trump is guilty in D.C. for being Trump on a sunny day or a cloudy day or any day. He'll be found guilty there. Then what will happen is we have blue secretaries of state, and I'm sure this is a coincidence as well. There aren't that many Democrat secretaries of state left in the country, but a few of them just so happen to be in the following states. You'll love this: Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. Republicans must win at least 3 of those 4 states to get to 270, if not all 4 of them. And it just so happens that they have Democrat secretaries of state. Man, the blind random luck of these Dems is they just walk between the raindrops. And so what's going to happen is after they convict him of basically de facto treason in their star chamber over there, these blue secretary of states are then going to come out and say, by golly, we shouldn't put an insurrectionist on the ballot. We shouldn't put a convicted felon on the ballot. Well, that'll be another month or 2 of legal wranglings and trials and arrangements about ballot access. So again, now we're well into the summer that we're not concentrating all our fire on Democrats, but we're essentially a legal defense fund on the right instead. Before you know it, the convention's in late July. We're now to August, September, and by then the Democrats are up on the air with hundreds of millions of dollars in ads. We are trying to run a legal defense fund. Our down ballot candidates are more anemically funded, all right, than an Ethiopian in search of a plate of food. And this is the plan. And if you have a brain or you're willing to see it objectively, it is very obvious. Now, it's not a foolproof plan. These people are largely fools. They just look brilliant because they often go unopposed. When you're not opposed, you look brilliant. You win every chess match when the other guy doesn't make any moves. So we don't have to sit here and suffer this fate, but we need a plan. And our plan needs to be more than this gets me the most clicks on Twitter. This gets me the most downloads on iTunes. This gets me booked on Fox News tonight. We're going to need more of a plan than that, Jesse, because the people we're up against are not simply doing this for profit or it's a business, but it's a real movement. It's a dark one, and they're going to execute their plan no matter how many clicks we're accumulating over here.
Steve, what is it about the American right that they still, no matter how loud they get, they still haven't accepted how evil the communist is? They can't get there, Steve. They always think that in the end, this will be too bad. I actually had somebody tell me one time, I'm not even kidding, I was telling him about these horrible, evil trials they're about to put Trump through and how he's going to get convicted. And I kid you not, he said to me, yeah, but Jesse, that's going to put Democrats in a real decision dilemma for the 2024 election. Yes, a real decision dilemma, as if the communist is going to sit around. Oh man, I'm not sure if I should go forward with this here. Gosh.
It's a real, geez, should I try to put my opponent in prison or not? Oh, wow, what the consternation. You know, here's the thing. Here's what I think is the meta argument on the right. And I've switched camps. I used to be in this first camp, and frankly, this is where a lot of our audience and a lot of our colleagues still are. There is this notion, and I believed it for a long time too. In fact, I'm wearing a red shirt. Last time I wore this exact shirt that I'm wearing on your show tonight was to help anchor the Blaze's 2022 midterm election coverage. I wore the Tiger Woods Championship Sunday red shirt. I had the Tubbo corn. I was convinced that we had exposed so much of this corruption and evil and rot gut that normie America was going to show up like 94 or 2014. And this time we didn't have mean tweets. Trump wasn't on the ballot. So there was no reason for them not to side with us. And they were going to see, just like they saw in Virginia the year before, the Democrats are willing to gender mutilate your kids, sell them out to fentanyl on the border, have you fight forever wars for their corporate WEF Soros interest in Ukraine. And that normie America, we had exposed this enough. Normie America was going to show up, Jesse, and it wasn't just going to be a red wave, brother. It was going to be a red wedding. It was going to be a friggin' massacre. And I was so pumped, I ordered the Tubbo corn, and I just sat there waiting for the returns to roll in that election night. And guess what happened? If you didn't live in Florida and Iowa, where I live, you didn't see a red wave. You saw barely a pittance. I mean, it was barely a puddle. And normie America never showed up. And I think where you and I are different is we are willing to acknowledge this. And many of our audiences and colleagues still believe that this is why, look at the chain of events. None of us knew they were going to come out with another 17 years worth of indictments against Hunter Biden. They dropped that on us out of absolutely nowhere. Now you've got Democrat senators coming out saying, this is totally justified to indict Hunter. These are criminal proceedings. This is Operation Fig Leaf. After they do that, Jack Smith then turns around and says, let's go to the Supreme Court so we can put Trump on trial right away. Why? Because your suburban and exurban neighbor who's living his Pleasant Valley Sundays and couldn't be bothered to stand up when against COVID, couldn't be bothered to say, don't put a mask on my kid, couldn't be bothered to say, I'm not taking your experimental poisonous jab to go back to work, couldn't be bothered on any of these things, is now suddenly going to be so angry about what they're doing to Donald Trump that they're going to rise up for him in ways they didn't for themselves or their children. See, the Democrats want to make sure that doesn't happen, and here's how. When we attack them, they're going to say to normie, they're going to bypass us. They don't care about you, me, and our audiences. They're going to go right around us to normie America, and they're going to say, hey, we indicted Hunter Biden first. We prosecuted Hunter Biden first. We put Hunter Biden in prison first. We're not partisan. We're actually the ones cleaning up the corruption. It's the Republicans who are partisan. They want to let Hunter Biden get prosecuted, but Donald Trump goes free. They're going to actually gaslight themselves as the arbiter of fairness. Did you see Chris Cuomo on News Nation now pretending that he is the arbiter of fairness and wants an adult impartial conversation? These people will claim any role. They'll play any role. They will recite any script whatsoever. And we just refuse to acknowledge it because it would mean that we would have to get out of our collective comfort zones to do so.
Well, Steve, my man, I appreciate you very much. Steve.
All right, so that's the conversation I had just a couple of days ago on our buddy Jesse Kelly's program over on The First. We'll get some reaction from Todd and Aaron here in a moment to see if any of that they view as fake news or not. After we remind you yet again about the greatness that is Eden Pure, and their Thunderstorm air purifiers are a huge hit in this audience. So many rave reviews, and now they're back with a new product as well. It's called the Eden Pure Gen 40 heater. And it uses both an infrared heating system and a convective heating system, and it puts it all into one space heater. So it'll heat your home and make you feel warmer while reducing your heating bills by using both of these forms of heating technology to heat a room. So right now, you can get an additional $50 off the Gen 40's sale price with my discount code. Just go to EdenPureDeals.com, enter the discount code STEVE50. Discount code, again, is STEVE50 at EdenPureDeals.com. Discount code STEVE50 at EdenPureDeals.com. Save money on your heating bills this winter. And check this out, the Eden Pure Gen 40 heater. Discount code STEVE50 for $50 off at EdenPureDeals.com. All right, fake news or not, anything in there from Jesse or me or between the two of us that you guys viewed as fake news?
This is true news as you can possibly find. And I love how you, with your analysis of 2022 and your wake-up call about the normies and human nature as far as comfort, and then that dovetailing with earlier what Jesse said about people just, they can't or they won't wake up until it's too late. That is laid out. That's not just a modern day American story. You read Elie Wiesel's Night, and the same thing happens. I mean, the walls are closing in. They're being moved out of their actual apartments, being moved into centralized locations. They're hearing stories of an escaped prisoner coming and saying they're rounding us up and they're killing us, and it was just too much. And they weren't comfortable, at least in the here and now. But they were coming from the legacy of Germany, which, in terms of cultural status, the arts, philosophy, how this level of horror only happens in other places. Their fantasy was still that was the truth. It's as great a task in anything we do, no matter what topic we're talking about on this show, is to wake up the normies and say your birthright is not an autopilot. This thing will die. And if not on your time, your children's time, do you understand that? Do you even care? And that's why we have to ask ourselves, is there time really left on the clock? Or is it gone? Because these people simply cannot be bothered.
Just to put a finer point on what I told Jesse, I think is the current meta argument on the right. If you believe that we just need to we have not yet reached a critical mass of exposing corruption, it's almost 100% you're supporting Trump in this primary. Okay? Because you view him as, if you're not just a total grifter, and I'm not going to assume everybody disagrees with me on the Trump-DeSantis primary is a grifter. There's plenty of grifters that do, but I know really good people who do. And they're in this camp. And they think that Trump is such a flashpoint, and what he will prompt them to do will be so obvious and out in the open that is how we will finally achieve the critical mass that we should have achieved in 2022 but did not. If you believe that there is no such critical mass for normie America, and we're going to have to do this the Chris Rufo way, basically, retake institution by institution, we're going to have to island hop this thing, okay? We're going to have to push the Soviets back country by country, take the Japs back island by island to Tokyo, all right? Then you're probably supporting DeSantis. And that's not I kind of think that is almost 100%. I think without exception, that's probably where things break down in this primary when it comes to the meta argument I was just articulating to Jesse. What are your thoughts, Aaron, on what you just heard?
Yeah, I thought that was about a 10-minute clip. I thought the whole thing was fake news and honestly just a waste of time. Just how many pounds of fentanyl poured over our southern border while we were listening to that conversation?
Nice.
Todd has expressed this before. How do you stack words together to express things in different ways that will finally get the point across that you're trying to get across? I increasingly am coming to the place where there is a segment of people wearing our jersey, or purportedly wearing our jersey, or used to wear our jerseys but are now not wearing the left's jerseys, but maybe are wearing a different team's jerseys than we are. There's a segment of people who will not wake up and smell the feces in the morning until they're on a train. And even then, I'm not totally sure. Breaking rocks. Look at the polls as they're breaking rocks. Look at the polls as they're being led away, never to be seen. There is a spiritual delusion, and it manifests in every facet of our society. Of course, it manifests in politics as well. Maybe that's one of the chief places where it manifests. Here's the problem. I understand this inclination that we just have to keep exposing the corruption. We have to keep exposing how incompetent and how malfeasant and anti-American our elites are. I understand that sentiment. What really needs to be exposed the most, though, is us.
Yep.
That's the exposure that needs to happen. Because at the end of the day, and you can make this case for basically any government, at the end of the day, the government, whether it's a communist, fascist dictator, whether it's a monarchy, whether it's the shells of a democratic republic like what we have or had, government is always a reflection of the people. It always is. You can expose the government for all it is. If you don't make that connection to us and putting the onus back on us, we're going to keep circling the drain. Tell me that's not what we've seen. My entire adult life. My entire life, really. The onus has never really been put back on we, the people. Only GW can save. Only McCain can save. Vote Romney or you hate America. And then we got a real populist, seemingly, a real populist uprising that actually had some fruit, at least electoral fruit. And for about 90 days, the system was scared, maybe even less than that. And now we're back. We're doing the same damn shows we were doing in late 2015 and 16. And I joined in November of 2015, and I sat through that primary in 2016. We're doing the same shows over and over again.
Well, what's the constant? Yeah. The people. You know, I listened to you articulate, and I realized those various positions over those years. I've held every single one of those positions. I remember being on my knees as a baby Christian. My wife's in the hospital. Yeah. Because with pregnancy complications with Zoe, she had to send me home because I was a distraction. Because this happened on election night of 2004, and I was literally I was by myself. My wife's in a hospital on her own. They had to throw me out of the room because I am in my living room on my knees praying to God as a baby Christian for George W. Bush to win to save America.
I'm not absolving myself out of this as well. And I know that's not what you were trying to say. Yeah. I'm just saying this as I remember it was 11-year-old Aaron on election night of 2004. I still remember being kind of nervous, but finally breathing a sigh of relief when I heard Dan Rather say, well, John Kerry is really hanging on by a slim thread now. I was there as well. We all have been there at some point as well. But you're right. The constant is the people. And if you look at school boards all the way up to state legislatures, all the way up to the federal level, the onus really never gets put back on us. There's a number of reasons why that's the case. We could get into, that's another rabbit trail we've already gotten into. But the real exposing that needs to happen is not at the federal government anymore. The incompetency that needs to be exposed, it's really on us. That's a difficult message. That's not a message. It's not a message that gets a lot of clicks. You suck. Do your job better. That's not really.
It usually gets prophets and apostles thrown into holes, beheaded, drawed and quartered, dropped in vats of hot oil, exiled. That's usually that where that message goes. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who stone the prophets and kill those whom God has sent, how I have longed to gather you in as a hen would gather in her chicks, but you just keep rejecting that message. I've been on both sides of this equation, man.
This is why I think this last week with the Iowa State Capitol stuff is so troubling. Because to find the words, people keep asking me, I don't know if they're asking you too, but hey, you guys, you tough guys, why didn't you go down to the Capitol and take it down yourselves? This would have been good for the show if we did that. People would have passed us off as, you're just doing
we have not talked about this. Yeah. We did discuss this privately amongst ourselves. We came to the conclusion, I thought about doing it. Thought about having him do it.
Yeah.
He thought about doing it anyway. We came to the conclusion if we did it, it would just be looked at as a publicity stunt and would cheapen the event. That's why we didn't do it.
Yeah, but it still would have probably drawn clicks and all that stuff. But all of that would have been the show. Okay. Instead, we needed to know what Aaron's talking about. What will we in a state where the red wave really happened? the pastors, the GOP governor, the GOP legislature, the family organization that we have here. Here's the place it could happen, and it didn't happen.
A guy from Mississippi came up and made it happen.
Yeah. All over 50 pastors walk in there together hand in hand and take that thing down. You're just walking out. We're done here, right? But it didn't happen here, and it's because of what Steve and Jesse talked about. The devil right in your midst. You're like, I think we still have more time.
Yeah. Everybody thought they had more time. The northern 10 tribes thought they had more time. They got up one morning.
Yeah.
And here come the Assyrians to put bits in their noses and lead them back to Assyria and to be lost to history. They were suddenly out of time. The southern 2 tribes thought they had time. Then one day a siege begins outside the walls of Jerusalem and it's Nebuchadnezzar. They were out of time. Everybody always thinks, everybody that assumes their position in the history books always believes, every empire, every kingdom, every culture, right before their place in the history book, they assume the position on the ash heap of history. They always thought right before that they had more time. Every single time. I'm sure 20 minutes before Fort Sumter, they were up at Congress arguing over the same, slavery, how many angels can dance on the head of the pin, as you like to say, codicils and regulations that they debated for how many years, how many decades. I'm sure right before the shots were fired at Fort Sumter, they still thought they had time to work this thing out. We always think there's more time until suddenly we are out of time. That's the lesson of history. Everybody always thinks there's more time than they actually have.
And the fact that we're having this conversation makes me think that we actually don't, and midnight has been reached.
God bless us, everyone.
Here's the challenge, though, is we don't know that either the other way. So we can't behave like that. Yeah. That's the case and create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Correct. Because then we're the wicked servant at the end of the parable of the talents who took our talent and hid it under a bushel. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's the temptation, is you can't go too far the other way too, where, oh well, of course you're out of time, but you stop fighting. Right. So typically it means we want to keep fighting in the way we're comfortable fighting. And that's why we run out of time.
Yes.
Not in the wise or effective way that would actually work, but would disturb our comfort level. More in a moment. All right, I'm told that we are finally able to connect with him. Joined now by a friend of mine, friend of the show, Congressman Chip Roy from the state of Texas, who is here today in the great state of Iowa. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Steve, great to be on, brother. Sorry we're a little bit late, but better late than never. We're going around your beautiful state and meeting with Iowans, and it's been a great trip. A lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm for Ron DeSantis.
So I was going to ask you, what are you doing here? You're here on behalf of the DeSantis presidential campaign. I'm guessing that's what got the attention of former President Donald Trump last night when he called for you to be primaried, but in a peak Trumpian way. He solicited a primary opponent for you, Chip, more than a full week after the filing deadline for one to actually be able to get on the ballot. But your reaction to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's just more of the same out of the Trump camp. I mean, there's a reason that the president has been hiding in his basement alongside Joe Biden, is that he doesn't want to take Governor DeSantis head on because he knows Governor DeSantis would clean his clock. I mean, maybe he would debate little old me if he thinks I'm so, easy to discard. I'd love to go down the list of his record and go say, hey, are you going to bring in your next 4 years the same kind of missteps that you brought when you came into the White House and you saddled up with Paul Ryan to not repeal Obamacare, not replace it with a strong market-based health care approach, not deal with the border so that we got actual reforms to block the ability of the current administration to do what they're doing with wide open borders, not bow down to the altar of Fauci and allow tyranny to take over our entire system and shut down our economy, not then give him a medal continue to go down the list of the things that are frustrating. Again, I will support President Trump. He's our nominee because, he did a lot of good things as president, and obviously he would be a lot better than Joe Biden in the White House. But I think we have the ability to do something transformative with Ron DeSantis, that we can have him for 8 years to be able to take what he's been doing in Florida and do that for the American people. I want my kids who are on this trip with me, who are 14 years old and 12 years old, I want them to be able to look up to the president, be able to be proud of their president and say, you know what, I'm going to, get into the thick of things, and I'm going to be proud of where this country is going and go forward. And I think Governor DeSantis offers that opportunity, and I'm happy to be in Iowa. And look, enthusiasm here is really strong. People here understand that Iowans select this, not polls. Okay? Polls are being crammed down on people, right? Instead of seeking public opinion, it's trying to shape public opinion by shoving polls onto the people of Iowa. But it is Iowans who understand they're the ones that get to decide this in Iowa. And on the ground, they realize that we choose principles over princes. We don't coordinate anyone. And we're going to get out here and work every vote through January 15th.
You've been a part of campaigns before. I've said this to you privately, and I've said this on my show publicly. I don't believe, and I say this as a DeSantis supporter, I don't believe without an effective counter to the psyop of these polls that he can win Iowa. I think that people just get so bombarded with these things, they wear you down after a while, and people want to feel as if they're voting for the winner and things of that nature. So what's your response to that? And I know you've already done a couple of spots here in Iowa already. What have you actually seen being on the ground here?
Well, I mean, what you're seeing, as you know, being in Iowa, people who are genuinely wanting to look at the candidate and make the right decision for the people. That's why the caucus is so important. That's why it's so important that all roads go through Iowa. My kids were commenting, like, they didn't expect it to be kind of like a congressional campaign, where you go into rooms with 50 people, 75 people, 150 people. The governor's been doing that for months. He's been to all 99 counties. He's had 160 events. He's got significant support and enthusiasm from elected officials across the state of Iowa. He's got significant support with already committed caucus goers. Like, this is what's happening on the ground. And if we're going to allow polls to decide our presidential election, then you might as well just get rid of the whole concept of a republic. You might as well get rid of any concept of the importance of states and just throw it open to popular opinion and let the polls decide. And oh, by the way, I don't think people were all that enamored of the polls in 2016. So why would we put our faith in the polls in 2024 to choose the president?
I find it fascinating to hear from people, DeSantis is down by 20 points in Iowa and 50 points nationally. So you're a UT guy. The Longhorns, last I checked, are a 4-point favorite over Washington in the Sugar Bowl. I assume that means then when the game kicks off on New Year's night, the scoreboard's going to read Texas 4, Washington nothing. Because of what the perception is of the game, that means Washington starts the game from behind, right? I mean, is that how this works? You're behind before anybody votes. Is that how the process works? I've not been a candidate. Explain that to me.
Yeah, the only way it works in that way you just described is if we're talking about Michigan, Steve, because we know what's going to happen there. If Texas plays Michigan, that's a given. That look. Well, you're exactly right? You play the game for a reason, right? That's why you do it. Otherwise, you would just take the poll at the beginning of the season and declare, Alabama or Texas or one of the teams the winner because they're the ones at the top of the poll. But you play the games for a reason. And you saw what happened in the SEC, right, where Alabama comes in with one loss and they beat Georgia. That's the reality of the political environment we're in. We're a month out still. We have Iowans who care deeply about their country. They know that we don't choose these through polls. They decide. And it's really critically important that people remember that. We do not anoint people. No one gets coronated. That is so critically important. We need someone who can serve for 8 years. We need somebody who can deliver like Ron DeSantis delivered in Florida. We need somebody who will actually secure the border once and for all, who will actually cut spending once and for all, who will actually stand up to our enemies, but without getting us in endless wars, and we'll get our troops into the position where we can win wars, but without fighting them. At the end of the day right now, we need someone who we can trust and get behind. Ron DeSantis has worn the uniform. He's been, showing how you do it in Florida, and I want someone who will do what they said they will do, and that's Ron DeSantis.
You've got enough of your own issues right now. being a member of Congress and anywhere from the ineptitude to whatever else you're dealing with there on a daily basis. It's Christmas time. Why come here and expend more capital? Why exhaust yourself over this when you're already doing a tour of duty in the Congress, Chip?
Yeah, this last Sunday, and I mentioned this last night here in Iowa, there's a Latin term, gaudete. You're a smart guy. You probably know it. Our pastor was talking about what that means in our Christian faith as we lead up now a week out where we celebrate the birth of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Gaudete is about rejoicing. And we should rejoice and be glad in the fact that we have a Savior. We should rejoice and be glad that we live in a country where we can actually worship that Savior. And we should then do all of that we can as husbands, fathers, dads, moms, wives, mothers, that we should do what we can to preserve that for the next generation. I'm here for that reason. My 14-year-old son, my 12-year-old daughter, they're with me, okay? They're up here because they care about their country, but I'm here because I want to fight to save it for them. And that's what Governor DeSantis wants to do. His kids are with him. His wife, Casey, is well documented, is with them. And the reality is we're fighting to save this country. We're fighting to take it back from the clutches of those who are trying to destroy it from within culturally, right? We're talking about simple things. Riley Gaines standing up and saying, you know what, I'm a girl and I want to swim against girls. No, men can't get pregnant. We should have bathrooms that are common sense. We've got a situation where Chloe Cole is trying to stand up and say, you know what, I shouldn't be forced into transitioning. I want to remain being a woman. We've got Scott Smith standing up against school boards in Loudoun County. But you know what we don't have? Are politicians willing to stand alongside those real Americans who want their country back. That's Ron DeSantis. He's not in it for show. He's not in it. He's not going around worrying about going after some congressman on Twitter saying that he should primary him. I mean, what a gas bag, right? I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And the fact is the American people are tired of that. They want people who will stand up and fight for their country. Like I said, I will proudly get behind and support the Republican nominee in order to beat Joe Biden. But the nominee of this party should be Ron DeSantis if this country wants to take our country back and have 8 years of leadership like we would get out of Ron DeSantis.
What is the most common thing you've heard on the ground here in Iowa thus far?
I mean, honestly, it's the specific issue of having someone that they can believe in, who's delivered, who has demonstrated a track record of success, and who's in it for the right reasons. When he joined the military, he didn't have to do that. He had gone to top undergraduate and top law school institutions. He left after 9/11. He put the uniform on and he went and served. People look at that and they go, this is somebody who's got a heart of a public servant, who is doing this for all the right reasons. And for all the Trump supporters out there, look, I hear you. I agree. I mean, I absolutely support a large number of the Trump policies. Our country was much better off 4 years ago. I just think we're going to be much better off over the next 9 years if we get Ron DeSantis elected. And people on the ground agree with that. They want somebody who delivers without the drama, who we don't have to look backwards, we can look forwards. Those things matter to people, and it matters that we do things the right way. And Governor DeSantis does things the right way. Eternally optimistic. He loves his country. He loves his family. He loves his home state, and he wants to see what he's been able to do for Florida. He wants to see that for the country, and people on the ground feel that way as well. And I want to make one other point, because I'm watching a lot of the influencers out there on social media responding to this exchange about when the president came after me saying he wants to primary me or whatever. The reality is they're pointing back to an interview I did on your show a few months ago. And you'll remember I got very angry and frustrated at some people who were attacking us and therefore having people call into my office. And they were going after some of the kids in my office. These are interns answering the phone. They were being rude and they were being disrespectful. And they were saying things that weren't true. And yeah, I got mad at them. And I do unapologetically, I called them out, okay? I shouldn't have used the word that I used, but the purpose of my calling them out was because we have to call that behavior out. We have to call it out when people are saying things that aren't true. This country is built on truth. It is built on the truth of Western civilization, built on the truth of the existence of God, that all men are created equal, and that we are endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights. Ron DeSantis gets that, and he will lead this country in that direction.
Finally, what is going on in Congress, Chip?
Unfortunately, everything is kind of reverted back to the mean. I've not given up hope. what we had done for the year in having the speaker's fight and in the spring getting the best border security bill passed we've ever gotten done, and getting the Limit, Save, Grow bill passed where we would increase the debt modestly but get reforms in place, a strong national defense bill. All of those things were things we did because we were united as Republicans behind conservative principles. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, by the way, on both the moderate end of the party and the sort of more conservative end, we got to let some time slip this fall, and now everything's reverting back to the status quo, where basically the military guys and the appropriator guys are making all the decisions. You know what that means? Hide your wallet, more spending. There's going to be a lot of continuation of what we just saw with the National Defense Bill, where we didn't get the woke reforms, but instead we got a bloated NDAA with no reforms on the woke stuff, but also with FISA, the surveillance stuff where they're spying on us piled on top. That stuff's wrong. So heading into January, I'm trying to hold the line on spending. The caps that we did get in place under the FRA, we should adhere to those. We should hold spending in check. We should make sure we hold the line on the border and either use the spending process or Ukraine or both to force Joe Biden's hand. And we ought to pass a reform to FISA so the government stops spying on Americans using government powers to do so. Republicans can still do that. If they stop using the excuse, oh, Chip, we don't have the votes, we don't have the Senate, we don't have the White House. You know what? They always have an excuse. If we take the Senate, they'll say we don't have 60. If we take the Senate, don't have the White House, say we don't have the White House. You know what? Last year, Democrats had 50-50 in the Senate, and they had a thin majority in the House, and they passed two massive liberal bills with the Inflation Reduction Act, so-called, with their massive subsidies for green policies, and they passed their big spending bill the previous year. We Republicans need to hold the line together to move the needle back for the American people. That's my position. I'm unapologetic about it. If my Republican colleagues are mad because I said name one thing that we've done, the best solution to that is to do something.
God bless you, my friend. I'll see you later tonight. All right, Merry Christmas.
I'll see you. Merry Christmas, man. I mean, look, we praise our Savior, and this is the time of season we remember what's important. And I'm so proud to be on the road with Ron DeSantis. He's a good man, and I'll look back on this knowing I ran through the tape. 2 Timothy, we're called to finish the race.
Amen. Thank you, Chip.
God bless, brother.
You too. Thank you. Gentlemen, your thoughts on that conversation with Congressman Chip Roy?
Well, my thoughts are after Chip gets done with what he's doing here and gets on the plane and goes home, I can't wait to hear feedback from you about your private tweets, texts, back and forth, because they're always very sober-minded, and I think we'll get a very genuine take on what the true nature of things is in Iowa. Again, if Iowa is prepared to be what it has always been, what's passed as prologue, all those votes on a guy you never heard of named Mike Huckabee, on a senator who just got done losing by like 20 points, Rick Santorum, on a Ted Cruz who was, just trying to keep his head above water in this new Trump environment. Iowa always said, I just don't care about what what you think of us. We have a job to do, and we're going to do it. And we may not anoint the guy who wins, but we're going to anoint the guy we think needs to be part of conversation so that the other guy is tested. Well, now we got, again, the red wave in Florida, the guy who's tested everything who Chip got done saying he's right there. Take him. Everything you've done in the cycles I just got done mentioned in Iowa is for this moment. And I'm hoping and praying that that's the feeling Chip is getting on the ground, that Iowans understand that if here and no further, this is the time.
Yeah, and that's got to be the sentiment. That has to be the sentiment. I'm not saying that is, not saying I suspect that to be the case. If there's any chance of an American revival or comeback, that must be the similar sentiment everywhere. The good news about primaries, the good news about letting the games play out is that you get answers one way or another. What we do with those answers is then on us, and that's a bridge to cross when we get there. But the type of sentiment that you described, Todd, that if we have any chance of taking this back, that has to be the same case in Alabama, in North Carolina, in Nevada, in Arizona, everywhere. But is it? We're going to get those answers sooner than later.
Well, I am going to go to one of the events tonight that Chip is doing with Governor DeSantis on the ground here in Iowa. And it's in what's probably been the most, in terms of growth, the most explosive suburb in the state in the last decade, up in the Ankeny area here. So I'm going to head over there later this evening and kind of see for myself what is the energy level I see there on the ground. And I'll be curious. I've not had a chance. I've been to, I think maybe only like 2 other events since May, so not a lot. So I will be curious to see what I sense on the ground compared to what I've seen in other years. I remember I emceed Huckabee's big event on New Year's Eve, which was like his last event before the caucuses that year because they were really early. Did some events for Ted right before caucus night, So I'll be curious to kind of see for myself what the energy level is. All right, we're back at it again tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck with a year-end 2-hour buy-seller hold. We're going to stick around and do overtime for Blaze TV subscribers. For everybody else, we'll see you tomorrow. John 3:17.